Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you again to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Exciting fun fact, speaking of patrons, we just added a new tier. If you go to patreon.com/speakingout, you'll see a new tier called the book club tier. And once a month, we're going to hold a Zoom meeting for people for that tier. And we're going to talk about topics found in my book, the memoir, The Devil Inside, as well as your perspective as the spouse of an abuser. I always say spouse, the former spouse.
Right.
But you were married at the time to an abuser.
It's exciting, Jimmy, to think that this is what we're doing. We invite you to become patrons of that tier. We would love to have you in with that group. We will be sharing some pretty fascinating facts and things that we have not shared in depth before.
Yep. So, today's episode, and excuse us because we're both...
we're raspy, we're sneezy, we're coffee, we're allergy.
She's got allergies.
Yes.
I'm getting over the flu.
Yeah.
The flu hit our house over Christmas, of course. So anyway, we're a little rough today, but we'll make it. So today's episode, we're going to talk about, there was a story, last week. It was published, December 27th, about this guy who I have dubbed Cinderella, this weirdo pedophile who broke into this little girl's home. Her mom was bring groceries in or something.
Shopping. Yeah, she was grocery shopping.
And finds a stranger in her house, completely naked, wearing nothing except her daughter's shoes. And her daughter's shoes were shoes that she bought for Christmas.
Yeah.
It was a Christmas present.
Christmas gift.
And so here stood this registered sex offender, little Cinderella over there, standing in nothing but these shoes. These little girl's shoes. And her daughter was in the home.
I'm in shock when I read the article. When Jimmy directed me to that, it's like, who does this stuff? And then I read he's a registered sex offender. And it's just like, I don't know, there he is. Like, here I am in your place, in your apartment.
Like he owns it.
Yeah, standing in your daughter's shoes, bare naked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the mom found him.
Well, I'll read a couple
door.
excerpts of this. A wanted sex offender was arrested after allegedly breaking into a home in the nude and stealing items, according to the apartment resident and police report obtained by WVLT News. Officials said that at approximately 12:25 p.m., so we're not talking in the middle of the night. This is lunchtime.
Lunchtime, yep.
On December 19, 27-year-old Michael Tyler Henegar, a.k.a. Cinderella, entered a person's apartment home without permission through an unlocked back door. While inside, he reportedly placed a Milwaukee M18 impact drill and a DeWalt 20-volt handheld work light into a children's Scooby-Doo bag. So picture that this guy's standing here naked with his little kid's Scooby-Doo bag.
I just can't.
And he's stealing toys from under the Christmas tree.
Right.
And thankfully, the mother, who's awesome, kicked into action. She picked up a stick and chased the guy.
I love what she did.
You know?
Yeah, I love. Well, she told her daughter to call 911.
Yeah, she did everything right.
Right.
And now this poor woman is sleeping with a couch shoved up against her door because she doesn't have a security system yet.
Well, it's traumatizing to find anyone breaking in your home, let alone someone like that. And I cannot imagine what she and the daughter are going through. I really can't. I can't.
Here are a couple points that we're going to make in this podcast. And by the way, I don't issue trigger warnings very often at all. But this one, some of the stories are pretty grotesque. And while I make fun of the pedophiles, as we should, because
Right.
they're just weirdos,
Yeah.
the stories are serious, and we're not making fun of the stories. We're picking fun at these weirdos who do these bizarre things to prove a point that it's really important to look at the facts of what these people do, to know how they think, to know why we make such a strong case
Right.
to keep them away from kids. Always.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cinderella does not belong in a church.
No.
Churches shouldn't say things like, well, he did his time in prison, like all the things that we hear. This is how these people think.
And that doesn't change.
No.
It does not change. Period.
No, it doesn't. And I thought about this too. Like, first of all, what freak of nature, what possesses somebody to break into a home and to dress in a little girl's shoe, to get naked and to
Right.
dress in a little girl's pair of shoes, and then to steal her Christmas presents?
Like I say, I'm scratching my head, Jimmy. Trying
Like,
to
is there
think
no
of this,
shame?
but no, it's not normal thinking, and for those people, and there are many who are trying to normalize some of this, there is no normalization. There's nothing normal about that behavior. Nothing.
And I think so many people think of pedophiles as these grown men who have this attraction towards children that they can't help, and they really wrestle with it, and eventually they just can't hold themselves back and they fall into temptation, right? That's how we hear churches describe
what
this.
we hear, but
Here you
that's
have-
not what we see.
no, you have
That's
this-
not what we know.
Cocky, arrogant, weirdo, little Cinderella who dresses in a little girl's shoes, breaks into her home, and he's standing there, and then he gets chased away. Like, I'm picturing this scene. So he's running away in these little girl's shoes, naked with his little Scooby-Doo bag draped around his shoulder. Like, what do you say when the cops show up? Like,
I don't know what you do say. Yeah.
what
This
do
is-
you
this is
mean
what I
I'm under
found.
arrest?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
And he's a registered sex offender.
Right.
He's
And
done this
that's
before.
the part that I think people need to grasp. This wasn't a one-time off-the-charts act.
Right.
This is a repetitive
Right.
act. I think somewhere in that mind there is this thrill of the shock effect. And what it does is leaves behind trauma.
Yeah.
People. There is always harm that is done when any kind of abuse takes place.
Yes.
Always. And we need to remember that first
Mm-hmm.
and foremost. We're not being irrational. We're not being non-loving people. We're being very rational and very clear. We need to protect our children from such people.
Yeah.
Period.
I
Keep our children away from them.
I was thinking about this too. When I was a kid, like, all kids do stupid things, and we've talked and joked about some of those things that, me and my brothers
Yeah.
got in trouble as kids.
Yeah.
I remember so many times where my face was so red hot that I thought it was going to melt into my body. I was so embarrassed and so ashamed. And every time that happened, I never did those things again.
No.
Never.
Ever.
Not in my life.
No. Same here.
And-
I'm telling you, even as we grow older, we do dumb things
Yeah.
or say dumb things. And
Yeah.
whoa, it's like, I will never do or say that again.
No, because there's this thing
right.
inside of you that says, what was I thinking?
Right. It's called a conscience, and I believe God
Right.
directs that conscience morally and spiritually.
Right.
Whether we are, high level Christian, whatever you want to call it, I think that's inborn in our
Yeah.
nature to know right from wrong.
But you don't see this with pedophiles.
No.
These guys, over and over and over again, And they keep doing more brazen things, more bizarre things, weird things. And this is how they think about your children. That's the point I want to make.
I have to think
this
this
is how they
guy
think
this
about your
guy got a
children.
big charge out of doing that.
Absolutely,
It was
he did.
absolutely
Or else he wouldn't have done it.
thrilling for him
Yeah.
to do that.
It was exciting.
Yeah, very much so. But the trauma, and there again, that he left behind, we need to remember that. And we need to remember it wasn't a one-time deal with him.
Yeah. So, we picked a few stories, and here's one that was, we mentioned Dom and Megan Benninger and their website, baptistaccountability.org, which is excellent. And I picked just, a random story off of here, but this can be replicated. I looked through several, and I literally could replicate these stories over and over and over through almost every story that's in print.
Yeah, right. They
With
all
the sex
follow
offender.
a certain pattern,
And that's that these people are weirdos. So here we have Pastor Prayer Group here from New York, and I'll just read a couple. I'll read a couple things about this. This guy's the president of a camp in New York. He's the lead pastor of a church. He's a former youth pastor, and he likes to grope and touch little girls during prayer time. So this actually, USA Today did an investigative story on this. It's an excellent, well done story. But this is dating back to 1997. Wayne Aram, that's Pastor Prayer Time. Wayne Aram was the first man Joy McCullough ever held hands with. It was 1997, and Aram was her youth pastor. She was 15, and he told her she was amazing. 19 years later, in 2016, a Christian children's camp in Western New York, 16-year-old Laura Snell straddled a bench facing Aram, who was now the camp's president. They were seated off to the side in the dining hall while a few other people milled around. He suggested they pray. He ran his hands over her shorts and up her thigh toward her crotch and slid his fingers against her outer labia. Snell felt confused, she recalls. No one had ever touched her like that. I honestly didn't even know what was happening to me, said Snell, now 21. He was definitely grooming me. I didn't realize how absolutely brainwashing it was. Okay, so Pastor Prayer over here suggesting that he's the one suggesting that we pray.
Right.
Which, by the way, I've written about this. I don't know if I've ever said this on a podcast. I never pray with my eyes closed. I never pray with my eyes closed because of perverts like this guy. There is no shame.
You did not mention that on a podcast before, but I totally get it.
Yeah.
You are right. That's an ideal time
Absolutely it
for
is.
groping, touching, fondling to take place in a church with younger children especially. But here this girl was even older, and it's just such a shock, I think. And the setting is godly prayer.
At a Christian camp. And it's the president of the Christian camp.
And you do not expect this ever.
No,
ever.
nor should you.
So, of course, she was confused, shocked, didn't understand what in the world would you think is going on. And I think you're left to believe a lot of times, did it really happen? Did it really happen? I think of Larry Nasser and some of the stories I heard with him. You're just in such shock.
Yeah.
This should, did it happen? Didn't it? Yeah, it did. Yes,
Yeah.
it did. Yes. Ideal
Because
time.
this is how they think.
Right, that's how they think. Very well planned out, very strategic. Pray, close your eyes, my opportunity.
And this, I hear this stuff all the time when I consult with a lot of churches, guys. And I'm telling you, this is as common as this water that's in my glass. This is how these guys think. I don't pray with my eyes closed. I stopped doing that years ago when I started hearing story after story after story, just like this. So, this guy, he's like the prayer guy, Pastor Prayer over here. And it's not just her, it's 16 other victims that USA Today alone found.
Those are just the ones that came forward.
That's right.
And keep in mind, the majority never do come forward for a number of different reasons.
So this camp, Circle T, Ten Commandments, where this guy is the president, they hire Ministry Safe and have them come in, and Ministry Safe does a report, and they say, well, lo and behold, we found all of this to be credible. So question, how does the camp respond? You guessed it. Drum roll, everybody. The camp Circle C Ranch published multiple statements on its website in recent months. By the way, this article is from this year, 2021.
Right.
It's just a few months ago. Circle C Ranch published multiple statements on its website in recent months, doubling down on the argument that Aaron has never acted inappropriately with teenage girls in any pastoral role. He's only the president. He's only the president of the camp.
I know it doesn't shock you because you've seen it time and time and time again. It will forever shock me that this is what goes on. Mm-hmm. It will forever just confuse me. I don't know how to explain it to another. I don't know how to explain it to myself. But he's left in that position at the camp with 16 people going forward, found to be credible stories, and there he continues.
Well, I used to be of the belief that if churches only knew what these people did, then they would protect these kids. They would say, my goodness, like Pastor Prayer is over here forcing his fingers in places where they don't belong during prayers that he initiates. My goodness, we'll keep him away. But instead, not only do they know the details, they hired investigators, and they have a whole report that they read, along with the recommendations from that report, and they double down on it and say, well, he didn't act inappropriately with these girls while he was in a pastoral role.
Love to know what role he was in.
Right.
I would love to know how they classified
What
that.
role was he in then when he did these things?
You would think they would have rolled him up in a blanket and rolled him down the steepest hill ever and said, bye-bye, Pastor Prayer.
Yeah.
And instead, he remains.
Yeah. I mean,
another story.
It's really mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. It really, I think to the point where we almost do not want to believe it. We question, well, what did they really find? Did those girls exaggerate? Did they tell the truth? What really went on? No, they told the truth. They didn't exaggerate. Yeah. He was found, to have done this stuff, but not in a pastoral
Not in a pastoral role. He was just praying and initiating those prayers as the president of the camp. But it wasn't a pastoral. He wasn't counseling them. I mean, what are you, nuts?
I mean, I'll never get it. It's
insanity.
Yeah.
So then here's another one. I don't know if you guys remember Captain Underpants, the Canadian colonel back in 2010, who shocked the world when he was dressing up. He was dressing up in women's and girls' underwear and brasiers. So, little Captain Underpants here, who flew Queen Elizabeth around when she came to Canada. He was her pilot.
When I hear this stuff, Jimmy, when I read it, when I see it, when I looked at his pictures, I just had to sit and shake my head.
Yeah,
in unbelief that someone can lead such a double life. Yep. Here's a revered colonel in the U.S. military, high-ranking.
Canadian.
Yes.
Military.
Canadian military. High-ranking, and then he lives this double life where he's dressed. Well, not only did he dress up in women's underwear, but steal the underwear, he also is guilty of murder, too.
Yes, yeah. He's also a murderer, and that's how he actually got caught.
Yeah, right.
There were two women on his street who went missing, and they did a police check, and they shut the road down, and his his the tread on his tire
I
matched
saw
the
it.
tire
The
marks
tire tracks. Yeah.
at one of the victims' houses. Again, we're not poking fun at the story because this is tragic. It's absolutely tragic. But this guy did this to dozens and dozens and dozens of women and girls. He was stealing their underwear. One girl, he stole 87 some pairs of underwear out of her drawer. That in itself is traumatizing. When you come home
Can't.
as a teenage girl
Oh yeah.
and your entire underwear drawer is
Anybody,
emptied out,
it's enough to freak you out. It freak you
so
out forever.
violating.
Yes. Freak you out forever. And this guy had these hoarded, by the way, like treasures in his place.
He had them
Yeah,
categorized.
categorized, knew what girl they were from, had them, it looked like it was
Color
color coded.
coordinated.
Yeah.
He had them labeled. He took pictures, not just of the underwear and bras, but of himself wearing them.
Right. Of him posing as a model, so to speak, which tells us again, these are not just random spur of the minute acts where something in his brain went a little cuckoo for a while and he goes and ransacks someone's underwear drawers and then comes and maybe slips on a pair of women's underwear, young girls' underwear, and snaps a photo. This is a repeated action over
with
and over and over again.
Extreme control. Because
Very much.
nobody knew about this. This guy was highly decorated.
And that's what I want people to remember. While he's doing these actions, he also is a colonel who is
flying Queen Elizabeth around.
Flying the Queen around. So he's not some crazy loony person, obviously. He's very distinguished. When they show pictures of him in his uniform, you almost want to take a bow and, feel honored to shake his hand. And then you see the other pictures and you're like shocked and stunned.
Yeah.
How can this be the same person?
Yeah. But, like this story is just absolutely grotesque. And the guy was brutal. He's a murderer. He's a sex offender. He's going to die in prison.
Obviously, he tortured his victims
and videoed
yeah.
the acts too.
Yes.
So the dude's demented. He's sick. But why do we bring these stories up? It's because I have yet to hear from any victim where they don't describe really weird, bizarre crap like this that their abusers did.
Right.
This is how they think. This is what they do. Sure, these guys took it a little bit farther. Most pedophiles don't break into people's homes. Most pedophiles don't murder their victims like Captain Underpants did. But they do really weird, bizarre things. They, I can't, for purposes of confidentiality and just protecting my dad's victims, I can't describe some of the things that he did to his victims and with his victims, but it was bizarro, weird, just weird
and
crap.
They were
He was a
repeated
weirdo.
actions while he stood in the pulpit
In a
and
suit and tie.
preached in a suit and tie, clean shaven, very prim and proper, always put together, always seemed like he was very distinguished, always. Never lost his patience with anyone, kind, considerate, polite, all of the above while he did actions like that also. Completely living a separate life.
Yeah.
A very calculated, and you have to be calculated. You have to be brilliant to hide those kinds of actions.
Yeah, you do.
The normal ones of us, we can't do it.
Right.
We cannot do that. How do we hide that kind of stuff? I wouldn't have the first clue how to do that. But these people are brilliant. They're calculated. They are dangerous. And once again, this is why Jimmy and I take the stand. Keep them out of our churches. Keep them
Keep them
away
away
from our
from kids
children.
always. This is how
Yes.
they think.
Don't
This is
hire
what they
them in
do.
daycare. Don't,
You want them thinking about dressing themselves up in your little daughter's or son's underwear? Because that's what they're doing.
Right.
That's how they think.
That's what their minds are about. And then their minds carry it a step further and a step further into actions,
Yeah, and they actually
repeated
do it.
actions, and leave behind a trail of just painful hurt and trauma.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know what people think these sex offenders do when they violate their victims. It's I don't know. I guess it goes back to what Les Ferguson talked about when we had him on our episode. The normal human
think
mind
so. No.
can't think about what it would take to abuse a child in that way because we can't even imagine it and we don't want to think about it.
Our natural instinct is to protect every child that we see, whether we know them or not.
Yeah.
Every child that we see, there's just something in our nature that says, I want to be here. I want to take care of you. I want to protect you. I don't want you to hurt in any way, shape, or form. These people, and I will call them monsters, these monsters have a very deliberate plan, and that is to hurt.
Yeah.
That's all.
In very weird, bizarre
in
ways.
a very strange way.
And I think that's the point, I think most normal people, when we hear somebody sexually abused a child, first of all, there's this compartmentalization that happens, and we're like, wait, I don't want to hear details. I
Right,
can't deal with
yeah.
it. I don't want to hear what they did to that child. I can't picture that child being hurt. I don't want to see it. It's like the videos of animals being tortured online. Like nobody
yeah.
wants to see that
No.
crap, because it's despicable. It's gross.
It's too hard to. Yeah,
it's very hard to
it's
see.
hard, yeah.
So I think in our mind, in normal people's minds, when they think sexual abuse, they're thinking kind of like the sex that they know, sex in a marriage, sex that's normal sex where you don't dress in little girls' panties and do all this weird, bizarre stuff.
I never even thought of that. I thought
Nobody does because
the
you're normal.
full extent of sexual abuse ended with touching inappropriately. To me, that is horrendous. Just that alone would be horrendous. I cannot imagine the raping of a child. And I hope we will put a disclosure at the beginning of this that we are talking about very, trigger points. But I think the human mind was not designed to comprehend all of that. And I'm going to go back and say it's evil. I don't think these people were born mentally disturbed. They may have some issues, but
if they were, they wouldn't be colonels and
Right. That's
flying
exactly
the queen around.
right, yeah.
Like these
your
are
dad
people.
graduated college, and my goodness, he
Yep.
had 5 years of Bible. Just saturated himself with God's word. He knew the Bible in and
Yep.
out.
Very intelligent people.
Very intelligent. This colonel, he didn't get there by happenstance. He was physically, mentally alert. He was on target. He had to be.
He passed psychological
Yes,
exams.
Exactly.
You know what it takes to become
I'm glad
a colonel?
you said that. Yes. Yeah.
It's
so,
not like they're like, well,
No.
you look
Low
like
IQ
you
or
look like
something.
you could
No.
make it.
No.
You're
Very
put through,
high IQ, very
you're put
well
through
educated.
so many tests.
Right. So, what do we do? What's the take all from this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to one, for the people who make the argument that, well, if somebody were creepy or if something were going on, I'd be the first to know. I'd be able to tell. Could you?
So, no.
Because nobody saw it with Captain Underpants. I mean,
Right.
really,
Nope.
This guy
No.
was brilliant. Super nice guy, kept to himself, was in what everybody called a normal marriage. Family guy through and through. Everybody loved him. But he wasn't a good guy
It's
at
the
all.
no, it's the double life again.
So, you know, I would say part one is never let your guard down and never think that you're so good at detecting people who are like this that you'd be able to pick them out of a crowd so easily. Like, I feel like I can pick them out fairly easily, but I'm not cocky and arrogant about that. Like, there are still many, many, many sex offenders that not in a million years would I pick them out of a crowd because they're so skilled. They're so good at it.
And I hope people are picking up on some of the words you're using: highly intelligent, skilled, charismatic.
Yeah, it's all intentional.
Family people. Right. Right.
Yeah. So I would say that's the first takeaway. You know, another one is this just proves our point so strongly that once somebody has violated a child in this manner, they should never be allowed around kids again, period.
Exactly.
Don't let them into your churches. If you have kids there, put a big "do not enter" sign on the door. Say you're not welcome here. Oh, but that's not graceful. Well, actually it is.
Yes, it is.
Actually it is, because I'm going to do everything in my power to protect our children against
if that
monsters
person
like
truly
this.
wants to worship God, that person can worship God in an adult atmosphere.
Yeah.
Or worship from
online. Have at
worship online. Exactly right.
So,
exactly
right.
Right.
I think that's a big takeaway. And then I think another one is that it really matters what these people do. The details matter. Even though we don't want to hear it, even though we don't want to hear all the gory details, when you have somebody coming in who's a sex offender or has a credible allegation against them, maybe they've not been arrested, they've not been investigated. If you have somebody who has a credible allegation, details matter, facts matter. They really do. They really, really, really do. Because there's a radical difference between an adult who struggles with chasing other adults, who's not in a position of power and things like that. There's a radical difference between that and somebody who's dressing up in little girls' underwear and taking pictures of himself, taking selfies, and breaking into people's homes and violating that privacy. And sex offenders who get out of prison and who keep violating boundary after boundary after boundary after boundary. There's a radical difference.
I keep thinking of that camp in New York. And when word hit the newspapers, I'm wondering what parents did, what were their thoughts. With their children, I think I would have been hysterical. I would never send my child back to such a camp.
But there obviously are parents who do.
But they are. And I think we need to grow beyond our being naive, that it can't happen to my child.
Yeah.
I was so naive at a point, and I learned differently. Yes, it can, and yes, it does.
Yeah.
We need to stop being naive, face the facts. There are evil people in this world, and our job is to protect our children from them.
And they're not going to stop. I mean,
No.
this guy who's the president of
No.
the camp, 16 individual stories from 16 individuals, none of whom know each other, and all of their stories are the same. Come on, guys.
Right.
For this guy to claim that they're just making this up, it's an impossibility. It's a mathematical impossibility.
Yes, it is.
So he's not going to step down. I mean, and that just proves he's going to do this again.
And again. And
again and again and
Yeah.
again. He's going to
Yeah.
keep producing victims.
He'll just become more masterful at it, more skilled.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, those are the takeaways. Do everything you can to protect your own kids, because it's obvious that other people won't do it.
Right.
Some will, but
The ultimate
there are
job
plenty who
is
won't.
our job to do it. Each one of us is protect. We need to protect those that are near and dear to us. Keep our eyes open to others, and do all we can to advocate against such stuff as this.
yeah, for for sure. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode, and we will catch you next round.
Again, for listening to today's episode, a special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.